Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for those who were able to attend today's information session. The topic today is going to be pavement marking services in British Columbia, and really the primary focus here is going to be on the upcoming round of contracts, so round 4 service agreement contracts. In the room here today, we have Rodrigo Desani, who is the Director of Rehab and Maintenance. We have Mark Pratt, the Manager of Maintenance Programs, Joey Vason, Maintenance Contractor Coordinator, and myself, Ryan Thorpe, who's a Regional Project Manager. And collectively, we make up the project team that's responsible for the procurement of this upcoming round of contracts. Any questions that any of the viewers have, please direct them to the email address as shown on the screen here. At the end of this presentation, which should take approximately half an hour, we'll go through all of those questions and answer them one by one. So before we jump into the presentation, just a bit of a disclaimer here. Basically, everything that we're presenting here is to the best of our abilities. We're trying to present accurate information and also information that will reflect the RFP packages. But ultimately, the packages that are posted to BC Bid should be the sole source of information when proponents are putting together their service proposals. And also with the question and answer period, we will do our best to answer as many of the questions as we can. Depending on the nature of them, we may have to defer some of those questions. And ultimately, everything that's needed for the putting together proposals will be detailed in the RFP package, which will be posted on the BC Bid website at a later date. So the real goals here, what we're trying to achieve, first of all, we just want to provide an overview of what pavement marking services in British Columbia currently look like, and then sort of start talking about how this is going to transition into the new round of contracts, the round 4 contracts, and also provide some information as to what changes can expected to be seen for these upcoming the round 4 contracts. And lastly, we also want to give a bit of an insight into what the evaluation process is going to look like. And as I mentioned, finish up with a question and answer period at the end to allow anybody to answer any questions or ask any questions, and we'll do our best to answer them. So we'll start here with an overview of pavement markings in British Columbia. Since 2004, BC has privatized pavement marking services, and they've been awarded as contracts to private contractors. And we've had 3 rounds of contracts so far. So we're currently in our 3rd round of contracts, which is going to be expiring December 15th of this year. We have currently 5 different service areas, and each of those have their own respective pavement marking service agreement contract. And sort of to give a sense of scope for pavement marking services across the province, the aggregate of all 5 of the service areas is currently approximately $11.5 million, and that consists of 30,000 line kilometers of long line pavement marking that are going down on an annual basis. So both of those values are annual. And in terms of the scope of the different service areas, they range approximately between $1.5 and $3 million. So there is a bit of a difference between different service areas. And ultimately, the details of all the round 3 contracts are available on the government pavement marking website, as shown on the screen here. For anybody sort of frantically trying to write this down, this presentation will be made available on our website, so no need to feel like you need to scramble to write anything down from this. All this information will be available on the website after a few days when we get a chance to post it. So service area size and the contract values, as mentioned, there are 5 service areas, and as you can see from the map, they vary quite considerably in size geographically, and also in terms of the contract value. We're not going to go into exact details of the table here, but that information is provided as a starting point. But really, I think what I'd just like to touch on here is the difference between the routine and quantified line kilometers. Routine is essentially the inventory that must be painted on an annual basis. So these are sections of highways that are painted every single year. And quantified is the line kilometers that are painted on a semi-annual, or it sometimes is 1 to 3 years apart. And ultimately, we have more quantified inventory than are painted on a given year. And they're typically painted based on a conditions-based type of prioritization. So we're going to move into the next step here, which is talking about the transition into the round 4 contracts and some of the key dates that you can expect to see things occurring at. So first, and one of our first kind of key date coming up here, it comes in early May, and this is when we're targeting to have the RFP packages posted to the BC Bid website. We're planning to have 5 different contracts, one for each of the service areas, and we plan to post them one day after each other over the course of a one week period. So they'll be posted sequentially. We are not going to have a limit as to the number of service areas proponents may make proposals on, provided that all their bonding and requirements are met. And we will also be holding a follow-up information session and have question periods once the RFP is posted, in which case any other questions that weren't addressed here can be asked and responded to by the ministry. We're looking at 8 weeks from time of the RFPs being posted to when the deadline would be, and that puts us into late June in terms of anybody planning on putting a proposal in. That's kind of the target date right now, but it will be 8 weeks after when the RFP packages are actually posted. There's going to be a little bit of time, clearly, for us to evaluate all of the proposals, but our target to actually award these contracts is going to be early August, and really the key date when these new contracts will come into effect is December 16th. So that way we ensure that there's continued service of pavement marking in British Columbia. And then to the successful proponents, spring of 2019 would be when the service transition into these round 4 contracts actually begins. So these are our best effort date estimates. Right now we're currently on schedule to meeting these, so we're quite happy with that, but bear in mind that these dates are subject to change given any unforeseen circumstances. So we'll kind of move into some of the key changes that we're looking at for round 4. We're quite excited about some of these changes, and looking forward to hopefully making some improvements within pavement marking in British Columbia for this upcoming round of contracts. The first and one of the biggest things is an increase of service level, and the exact amount is not entirely certain right now, but we can, I think, expect to see 20 to 30% increase for each of the service areas. And so that'll come with an increase to the upset price that's proportional to the increase in service. And really what we're trying to target is 3 main areas with this increased service. The first being challenges with durability. And so the strategy here, there will be sections of highway that are designated to have a second code application of pavement markings in the same year. So basically that means applying pavement markings to the same section of highway twice in a given year. And this is to target the areas that we've had challenges and durability issues with presence being the primary driver. We'll also be seeing some enhancements to the quantified program, and the distribution of that is most likely to take place in areas that have faced the biggest challenge during this last round. So we're not likely to see even distribution across the province there, but really targeting where we've had the most challenges with that quantified program in this last round of contracts. And then lastly is more targeting the wet night visibility challenge in the Lower Mainland and Vancouver Island service areas, and really applying a little bit thicker paint, so an 18 mil wet thickness, and also with the BC blend, so just a different spec of bead that we're kind of seeing some promising results in terms of increased retroreflectivity. Now, all of these exact numbers, the upset price and the exact service level increase will be detailed in the RFP packages, but we're just trying to prime folks as to what the sort of anticipated changes to this service level we're expecting for this upcoming round of contracts. So some changes coming as well to the quality management and quality control. Now, from the contractor's perspective, there's actually not really much change. The onus on all of these points really is going to come from the ministry, and what we're going to be requiring is essentially a cooperation to help the ministry perform these improvements to the quality management and quality control. So the first key point is actually going to be cooperating with the ministry to doing testings of the paint itself. And really, it's simply going to be a cooperation to allow our ministry representatives to grab samples of paint, either from the truck or the tote at request, and sort of the order of a couple times over the course of a paint season. Another minor change is regarding the DIPME data. So the DIPME is the sensors that sort of measures and data logs how pavement markings are actually going down on the roads in various locations. And we're simply going to be asking for the raw data as opposed to the current version, which is an Excel format. And then the last, another minor contribution from the contractors that's going to be required here is to show product certificates if requested, and then also have a declaration that's signed by the contractor. Now, this declaration is really simply saying that any products used are in line with the recognized product list, and they've been stored as manufacturers recommended, and they have not been modified in any way. So the recognized product list, BC Ministry of Transportation currently maintains a recognized product list. Now, this is not exclusive to pavement marking. This is essentially every service that's provided, and contractors can essentially use any product from that product list. Now, currently we have reference to other jurisdictions with the with regards to the recognized product list. Oh, sorry, stepping back from the mic here. And we're actually going to be taking away that reference to other jurisdictions, and so only products that are explicitly listed on the recognized product list will be allowed. And we are also doing a review of a current review and update of the RPL, and this will be completed prior to the posting of these RFP packages. So while you're putting together any proposals, you'll know exactly what that RPL is going to look like. So the length of the contract, currently we have a 5-year contract in round 3, and coming up in round 4, there will be an optional 2-year extension to this contract. So it could be as much as a 7-year contract. There's some changes coming to our annual price adjustment factor. So the annual price adjustment factor is basically a formula that calculates how the base rate of the contract changes on a per year basis. And it uses various market indices. There's material indice, labor, accommodation, and fuel. So we'll still be keeping that formula and that style of adjustment to the price. But the main change that you're going to be seeing here is the material component index. And to help reduce the uncertainty with the U.S. paint index and the U.S. Canadian currency exchange, which is the current approach, the material index will be, in round 4, we'll be using a CPI, a consumer price index, to replace that current methodology from round 3. A couple changes regarding bonding as well. So in terms of the bid securities, in the past, ILOCs were the only option, but what we're introducing this round is a bid bond. So proponents will have to secure one or the other, either a bid bond or an ILOC. We're just trying to create more options for contractors. And then the actual performance bond is be a slight reduction from what it is in round 3. And really we're just trying to align the amount, the 50% of the upset price for the performance bond with the current practices and standards within the BC Ministry of Transportation. Okay, so lastly here we'll just move on to the evaluation process and give a bit of an overview on the evaluation process that you can expect to see for this upcoming round of contracts. So there's going to be ultimately 3 phases, and each of them will be evaluated sequentially. The first is third-party document review, and this is a simple pass-fail for proponents to get to the next step in the evaluation process. They have to pass the third-party document. We will be offering an optional review and this will occur between when the RFPs are posted and when the proposals are due. And really what we'll offer proponents is one opportunity to submit their third-party documents, and the ministry will review and provide feedback of that of those documents. And again, there will only be one opportunity for that, and it is optional. The next step will be a service proposal, and this will comprise 10% of the total score, and it'll be based on qualifications and experience, the processes of longitudinal marketing within the proposal, as well as quality management processes outlined within the proposal. And then the third and final will be the price, and this will make up 90% of the total score. Really, there's a fixed level of routine and second coat, and so these are services that must be met. There's no opportunity there for changes to that. Where the proposals can get competitive is with the quantified services and also the additional services. So a little bit more detail about the price proposal. Again, as we mentioned, the routine and second coat areas, those cannot be reduced. Those are services that must be completed within the proposal. Regarding the quantified services, there's really ultimately 3 options. Basically, you can do option 1, which is perform all of the quantified work at a price that is less than the upset price. You can do all of the quantified work at a price equal to the upset price, or you can do less work than the target quantified, but at the upset price. And then with regards to the unit price proposal for the additional services, this typically makes up about 10 to 20% of that 90% price, but all of the exact details and the formula to how this is calculated will be provided within the RFP package once it's posted to BC Bid. So I think we're ready to move on to questions and answers. And so if they haven't been done so already, we'll be looking for questions to be coming in on the website as posted on the screen here.
So the first question, Ryan, which I think you already addressed in your presentation, is just confirming that this presentation will be available online for the interested parties to replay.
Yeah, that's correct.
And, the next question is, will the contracts include guaranteed amounts of short line work for each service area? Short line work, I think it's a typo.
Short line workout. Is that
if that refers to transverse markings?
Yeah. So if that refers to transverse marking, there's no guarantee on amounts of transverse marking. This is predominantly a long line contract.
So the next question is, when we've said that any product on the BC recognized products list, do we mean that the contractor can use any type of material or a combination of the materials so long as they're on the recognized product list?
Yeah, so as long as we stated, as long as those products are on the recognized product list, they can be used. But you know, you can't blend products per se. I'm not exactly sure if that's what the question is getting at, but there's no making of a composite material that combines. It needs to be one homogeneous material that is on the recognized product list. Provided it's on the recognized product list, it can be used. And that's not limited to paint. We do also have some durable products on the recognized product list as well.
The next question is, do we anticipate adding any products to the RPL tender close dates?
Yeah, so with regards to the recognized product list, we are currently reviewing the current recognized product list and a number of materials, some of which are not currently on there. So depending on how that review goes, we may see some additional products on that recognized product list.
So another question here is, instead of using second coat applications, can durable pavement markings be used on a performance-based warranty? For example, thermoplastic spray warranted for 3 years.
I think that's a great question, and we'll have to follow up on that question. Yeah, we'll provide a follow up on that question.
So another question is, how will the contract extension be determined?
So contract extension will be based on the performance of the contractor during the term of the original 5 years, provided that the contractor is meeting all the obligations of the contract. There's no reason why that contract wouldn't be extended. All of the details will be included in the RFP package and the contract as to what measures would be taken for extension to that contract.
So the next question is, was there any consideration into splitting the transverse and longitudinal markings?
So we did actually look at how the transverse markings and the long line markings differed. Presently, most of the transverse markings are separate to the long line markings. To be clear, this contract is really a long line contract. With the exception, there are a few additional services that are part of this contract that include transverse marking, and this predominantly relates to new project work and layout work, but this is not a transverse marking contract. It's really a long line contract.
And the next question is, what is the BC blend of bead?
So the BC blend of bead is simply 20% of the bead is it's a larger diameter. The code, I believe, is P40, and it's 20% of the bead is this larger P40 bead.
So another question here, Ryan. Are there any changes to the reflectivity numbers?
There are a few minor changes. We're actually looking at unifying that across the province. Those will be detailed in each of the contracts, the RFP packages. But basically, the changes would be very minor, if any, regarding retroreflectivity.
So the next question we have here is employee succession part of the contract?
No, there is no successorship as part of these contracts.
Okay, another question here, Ryan. In regards to the extension, if after 5 years the province determines that there are better products to use other than paint, what happens then in regard to the extension?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think we'd have to evaluate that at the time. But given that we are satisfied with the work being done, that extension likely would be granted. But that's something we'd have to determine at the time.
Another question here. Have we considered removing all transverse markings from the contract? Noted that the crews and equipment are completely different.
We did, as I mentioned, we did examine how and whether the transverse markings should fit into this contract, and really where it comes down is in the new project work, in which case the crews are already going to be there for the long line, and because we have layout requirements, we wanted to stay consistent with the workmanship of the layout, and these crews will already be there doing the long line layout as well.
There's another question here. Noting that the raw DIPME data is required, can you just go into a little bit more detail about what that involves?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that there's actually several ways of doing that. Really, it's a matter of getting Wi-Fi on a periodic basis to the laptop that's recording all this data, and we'll likely be looking at once to twice a month. So there are other options for live data. We're not looking at this as a monitoring. We just want to look at this as an auditing program. So most likely it would be getting Wi-Fi to the laptop once or twice a month.
think we'll just hang on for a few more minutes here. If anybody has any last-minute questions, they can email them to tran-mc.procurement@gov.bc.ca. So another question came in here, Ryan. Is there going to be a separate contract for the maintenance of the transverse markings?
So maintenance of I guess the transverse markings in themselves are separate contracts, with the exception of the assured transverse, and as we kind of mentioned before, that basically includes the new project work, but not maintenance of the existing ones. So further to that previous question, actually, just a little bit more clarification. The transverse markings are administered on a district level, and so that's sort of where those contracts are procured, and whereas this is a provincially wide program here.
Okay, so thanks everybody for all of your questions. So we're just going to wrap up here, but we've had a couple of reports of intermittent audio or video. So just a reminder that everything will be available, the recording, and hopefully the issues will be addressed there, so you can check that if you missed any of the questions and answers. Also noting that some of the questions that were asked may not have been answered in this Q&A session, but we'll do our best to get a response to you directly, or provide information on the pavement marking website or as part of the RFP process. Thank you.